That is Congressman Darrell Issa. He is a member of the House Oversight, House Judiciary, and Foreign Affairs committees this morning. Good to see you, sir. Thanks so much for weighing in.
Good morning. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter to you. Your thoughts now on Jeff Sessions saying no, not yet, on a special counsel, for a second special counsel.
Well, I think the speed with which he goes sort of through this methodical process, we could all second guess. But the fact that he's going through a process that could and likely will lead to some sort of outside investigator, but at the same time going through and saying, let's have the Inspector General look at this for what's in his jurisdiction. Let's bring in a U.S. attorney who isn't tainted by the previous items. I think what he's doing is giving credibility to the fact that he's looking for the truth, not quickly trying to jump to something to find scapegoats. He will, in my opinion, though, end up with an outside entity that has to deal with some of the rotted activity of people still at the Department of Justice and the FBI.
Well, I think you make a good point, because the Utah federal prosecutor can, in fact, seek indictments, can bring charges, something that Michael Horowitz in the IG's office can't do.
Exactly. What Michael Horowitz has going for him is he's been before Congress for a decade, complaining about some of the problems, showing us some of the things wrong at the Department of Justice, including double standards for how they enforce harassment in the workplace, other things of that sort. And so Congress should give him the benefit of the doubt that he's going to turn over to, if you will, the U.S. attorney, anything that needs to be prosecuted, and he will get answers, or he will get an outside subpoena. I have no doubt about it.
Well, there's a lot to look at, from the bias at the top of the FBI and the Department of Justice against Donald Trump, to really handling the Hillary Clinton email investigation as a so-called matter and not a criminal investigation. Do you think he is equipped to look independently at both of those two things?
I don't think any one or even a dozen people could look at all that was done wrong during the Obama administration. Remember, Eric Holder withheld documents, lied to Congress about what his involvement was, and was the first attorney general, first cabinet officer ever held in contempt. And he is actually, still very actively part of the Obama network. He's one of the lead counsels representing California and advising them on some of the absurd things they're doing. So we're a long way from getting to the bottom of a lot of things. Well,
it's true. Not just Eric Holder, but now we're talking about new text messages that suggest a meeting at the White House of some sort, where Brennan was involved, Clapper was involved, and here you have these two individuals on CNN umpteen times a day trashing this president, even though they apparently they were well aware of what was going on in terms of this incredible bias and this creating a narrative that Donald Trump had anything to do with the Russia meddling.
Well, perhaps the best way to hide initially their own involvement with Russia was, in fact, to say, look at Trump, look at Trump. But it is coming back to be, there was only one passing of money that we can find to the Russians, and it was through the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton.
Right, exactly, because they paid for the dossier, which was used to wiretap Carter Page and right. Among others. Let me ask you this, because there's been so much stonewalling. Do you actually have confidence that you are going to get the documents that have been requested? Your colleague and the chairman of the Judiciary Committee joined us 2 weeks ago and basically suggested he was about to send in that subpoena for documents. Listen to this. Here's what he told us. I want to ask you about the fallout. Congressman, let's be clear. There are 1.2 million documents. You've only seen 3,000 of them. You've been stonewalled for 5 months.
We have seen some documents. We've seen more than we saw from the Obama administration Justice Department, but we need more documents, and we need them now, and we need them unredacted, by the way, Maria. If
you keep getting stonewalled and you don't get these documents, are you going to subpoena these documents?
Well, the answer is yes.
And of course, now we know that the subpoena has gone through. The FBI has responded, and Christopher Wray, the director, said he's going to double the amount of people who are coming up with these documents. I mean, you laugh, but, you know, the truth is I appreciate Wray responding and saying that he's doubling the efforts. But if 27 people produce 3,000 documents in the last 5 months, do 54 people produce 6,000 in the next 6 months? I mean,
exactly.
They need to get the documents.
Here's the challenge that Congress faces, and we'll leave aside who's in the White House. These bureaucracies have gotten very used to using we have to look through them, we have to redact them, we have to decide what you get. And so rather than saying, okay, we'll agree on release later, but we'll let you look at all the documents in their original forms that are appropriate, they don't do that. And this is, in fact, probably the area in which the Constitution needs to be tested, because whether it was Benghazi or Fast and Furious or the IRS, in every case, these institutions, these bureaucracies, absolutely said, we have to look at them first, redact them first, and decide what you get. And then they use that as a technique to drib and drab documents. I mean, it has been close to a decade since Brian Terry was gunned down in Arizona in the Fast and Furious case that Eric Holder was involved in. And we still do not have the last of the documents, because we only learned a few weeks ago that Eric Holder and his Justice Department didn't use word searches that would have gotten some of the documents we were asking for. So, yes, we have to have a different system altogether. And it's one of the challenges is no president, no administration wants to say, yes, we'll let you look at the raw data. And yet, if you don't have that opportunity, what ends up happening is you don't get any kind of real-time investigation, and the guilty get away. They usually retire.
Right. So is there anything that can be done to get them moving? Because I appreciate the spirit that Christopher Wray is showing us by doubling the number of people. But the point is to make this a priority and send the documents unredacted over to the committee.
Exactly. There's only one privilege that an attorney normally looks for, and that's attorney-client privilege. And that generally doesn't even exist within the documents we ask for. And there's only one other privilege of any significance, and that's the question of, was it communication related to the president covered by that constitutional decision by the court? These documents being asked for cover neither of those. In most cases, what they're going to do is they're going to redact based on, quote, law enforcement sensitive. This is a hogwash invention of the Department of Justice. It needs to be ignored. To be honest, my chairman is a good man, but he's been very slow to not only issue the subpoena, but to start saying, no, we want at least to have in-camera review of these documents in real time. And if we can't get that, then we need to get into the court system, not because it's President Trump or President Obama, but because Congress needs to have the authority to look at things in real time. And right now, there's been an elongation. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Each of those investigations I mentioned, Benghazi, IRS, and Fast and Furious, they all took longer to get not done than it took from the day of the Watergate break-in to the resignation of Richard Nixon. That's a difference in the time it takes to get discovery, and that's what's changing the relationship that the American people object to, where no one's accountable.
Right.
You know, for better or worse, Nixon was held accountable in a matter of months, not decades.
Right, exactly right. And at the end of the day, for the IRS, there was no accountability. I mean, what ended up happening to the people who targeted those who they didn't agree with? Nothing.
Nothing.
You know, and the American people need to be able to trust their government, their IRS, their CIA, their FBI, and the incredible amount of bias here has been shown. And now we actually know. The next question is, how high up does it go? Was President Obama directing all of this?
I have no doubt that Valerie Jarrett, the president, were aware of what Eric Holder and others were doing. You know, Eric Holder told us he didn't text, he didn't email, and he said this under oath. And of course, as we started getting documents, we found out just the opposite. He was very, very closely directing it. As a matter of fact, my favorite quote is on a T-shirt now for my staff about Issa and his idiot cronies. He was very active, and that's one of the challenges. Clapper lied to Congress and eventually admitted that he had been, not only not candid, he outright lied. Eric Holder lied to Congress. None of these people have been held accountable for what is, in fact, a crime.
These are felonies.
Yes.
Congressman, stay with us. We've got a lot to talk with you about, from sanctuary cities in your state, California, to the fallout for Facebook after this data mining scandal. As a leaked memo from a top executive shows the shocking lengths the company would go in the name of continued growth and making money. Congressman Darrell Issa returns after this short break to discuss all of that. Follow me on Twitter, @Maria_Bartiromo, @Sunday Futures. Let us know what you'd like to hear from the congressman, as well as Alan Dershowitz and Bud Cummins coming up. Stay with us. We're looking ahead on Sunday Morning Futures this Easter Sunday. 2016 memo where a top executive prioritizes the company's growth at any and all costs, even if bullies or terrorists use the site to take human lives. I'm back with Congressman Darrell Issa talking about this. And Congressman, I know you're a free markets guy. You were a businessman before becoming a congressman, and you want small government. But learning what we have about Facebook and about the incredible amount of power these technology companies have, should there be better guardrails in place to protect user data?
Well, I think anytime a company is essentially monetizing data, there has to be a lot more protection for the consumer. If you contrast Apple and Facebook, Apple has a strong tendency to believe in your privacy. For years, all the way back when Steve was running the company, they've instituted protections that are well publicized. Every employee knows it, meaning they get it at all levels from top management down, which is going to reduce the chances of your data being falsely used. Mark Zuckerberg, for better or worse, formed his company by taking other people's data and if you will, using it without their full permission. And that culture seems to have perpetuated itself all the way into a multi-billion-dollar dynamo.
Yeah, I know, but at this point, what can you do? What can be done in terms of technology companies and their use of data? How can the public feel secure that, in fact, they're not selling their personal information? I mean, I did a documentary on Google almost 10 years ago. And we won an Emmy on it because we reported that Google would anonymize your searches after 2 years. Well, why? Why save my search results for 2 years that it's mine? I mean, when people go in that search line, you're putting in there your deepest secrets. You're searching for things that you may not want anybody to know about. Why does Google save them for 2 years?
Well, that was a fair question then, and I think in the case of Facebook, the fair question now is where is government's appropriate, if you will, oversight and regulation? And very much as a libertarian, I would ask people, there are two historic documents or laws that people are all aware of and most people agree with. Truth in lending, which allows you to know what your real interest rate is. It mandates that it be understandable so that you give a consent. And people kind of get that. Right. And then when we look at other consumer protections that we enjoy, including protection from under HIPAA, protection from your health care information being used even by a doctor in any inappropriate way. As a matter of fact, the medical profession has to guard against the loss of that data in a uniquely more secure way. So do people agree with the HIPAA law that protects your health care? Yes. Do we believe in truth in lending? Yes. So when we start looking at regulating these industries, I think there are good bellwethers of appropriate and necessary protections for the consumer that the consumer is going to want.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Real quick, Congressman, before you go, because it's your state, California, now you've got Orange County voting to go against the sanctuary city laws of California. Will that go anywhere? What's your take on the current state of play there?
This fight, both Orange County at the sheriff level and Escondido, where the mayor there is leading the fight, these are examples where you have communities that want to protect their community and see the California laws as actually hurting them. And so what was originally a fight of President Trump trying to protect 49 states from one bad actor in California, it's now within the state that people don't want their criminals released in Orange County. They don't want them released in Escondido.
Right.
But let's understand, if you release a criminal alien, they can go anywhere. So the only way to really protect America is at the federal level. But I'm really proud of a lot of these sheriffs who have stood up and said, I'm tired of California tying my hands.
You're right. It's absolutely true. We'll watch that. It's very courageous. Congressman, good to see you, sir. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Happy Easter again.
And to you, Congressman Darrell Issa. How serious is the president about pulling the U.S. military out of Syria?